we talk everything that's going on in this sport, and it's the craziest thing is we've got rankings, which we're going to get to. We've got matchups, which we're also going to get to. You obviously we're powered by Bet Rivers. You can follow us live via YouTube or Twitter. And we got this is Wednesdays when I get together with these guys, we have a lot of fun. First up, we've got Trevor Knight, former Oklahoma and Texas A&M quarterback, Field of 12 analyst. Trevor, how you doing?
I'm good. Hey, it's Wednesday. I love Wednesdays because you can steal a little bit from last week. You can look a little bit ahead. It's perfect show. Excited for the night.
And then we got Kevin Sumlin, the coach, our coach, A&M, Houston, Arizona, Field of 12 analyst. Coach Sumlin, how are you?
Great. I agree with Trevor. Everybody's already analyzed last week. We'll talk about that a little bit, but it's time to move on as well. So we get the best of both worlds on Wednesday nights.
Oh, you're it's not that you're preaching to the choir because I know it, but the reality of it is we're going to talk the CFP rankings and give some reactions. We're going to talk some dark horses. We're going to talk Big 12. Are they on the rise? And we're going to talk a lot more. But before we get to that, Coach Sumlin, I want to start with you. Toast of the night. What do you got for me?
I've gone around and, I have some interesting ones, right? What I hit Mac Brown last week. And everybody said, what is that about?
Paid off.
That's right. But I'm going to go with a quarterback that threw for 7 touchdowns in 1.5 last week, 9 total. Tanner Mordecai, just out of nowhere, blazing it up and down the field against my Houston Cougars, which I did not like. But 7 1/2, 9 for the game. He gets my toast of the week.
All right, listen, I love it, Coach. Cheers, everybody. Hey, there we go.
Hey, if you like offense, you enjoyed that game. My goodness.
I mean, it was an insane game. SMU and Houston, for those that don't know, for the uninitiated, it was, I mean, up and down, 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 just going up and down the field. I was like, somebody's going to have to get a stop.
Well, at least Houston made some kind of adjustments because he didn't throw 7 more in the second half.
Yeah. That's a win. That's a win on the defensive side.
All right. T Knight, what you got?
All right. So Drew Pine threw for only 85 yards in the win over Clemson. So my toast of the night, I'm going to read these plays off from the game cast. Prince Collie, 17-yard return of a blocked punt later in the game. Benjamin Morrison, 96-yard interception return. Guys, we talk about 3 phases of the game. Notre Dame got a huge win, putting 3 phases all together. Defense, special teams, huge plays, step up. So cheers to the Fighting Irish, big-time win, but for all 3 phases coming in clutch.
Good call.
I love that. I love that. I love that because so often we forget about both the concept of hidden yardage and special teams as a weapon. And listen, you might make me change what I have. No, you know what? Listen, I've been critical of TCU because I don't like the angles that they've taken to the football. But we saw some real vice tackling from TCU. And I gotta toast I'm gonna toast. This isn't just TCU. This is just football in general. I'm toasting to vice tackling where you have an outside, a hammer guy, a splatter guy, and then you just have the ball carrier in the middle and you squeeze it. It's like a pimple. You're popping a pimple. And they popped some pimples against Texas Tech. And that's all I want to see. That's what I want. I just want guys to move that way. So I'm toasting to that. And listen, if you're a fan that doesn't understand vice tackling, Coach, can you kind of get into the weeds on it?
Well, there's everybody gives a hard time because it's easier when it's in the box. You got more guys than population to the football. But when that ball gets on the perimeter, guys panic. They get square on the ball carrier. They don't use the sideline even as a vice, right? The 12th,
Yes.
the original 12th man on the field, the sideline, right, to vice the ball, meaning use that and use your angles and leverage. So, that's getting drilled a lot more now. But football's being played in space, and so when you play in space, and there's some great players, not good, great players out there, just like one-on-one basketball, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're playing a great player in space, it's helpless to put one-on-one. You got to help it on defense, right? Force him one way to your help, and it's the same concept in vice tackle.
I absolutely love it, Trevor. Listen. We talked a little pre-show about your hoops back in the day, hoops where you're just out there busting some guys behind. So playing one-on-one is hard, man.
Very hard, very hard. And that's a good point. As an offensive guy myself, and as most, not even novice fans, even some expert fans watching games, you follow the ball. And so we get oohed and awed when an offensive player makes a crazy move to make a defensive player miss. Yes. Not as often do we notice this type of pursuit from the defensive side of the ball because it looks routine, but it's really not routine. It's taking the right angles, and it's an incredible play by that defender. It's just not an ooh-ah type of moment, but it's certainly the way that some of the guys that are doing this technique are finding themselves on rosters on Sundays for a long time.
I'm going to ask you guys this. I'm going to start with you, Trevor, because you just answered. You brought up a really good point, and then we're going to get into the rundown. But I want to ask you this, because you mentioned the fans. I think that football is a show or TV show for a lot of people, and offense is the protagonist. Do you think I'm crazy for saying that?
No, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. For your everyday fan, they want to go and watch touchdowns and explosive plays, and we all want to sit here and say, oh, Bama, LSU, and Death Valley 9-7, kind of the old days of the SEC grind it out. We all want to say we like those games, but nobody's flipping on the TV hoping that it's going to be just a defensive matchup. They want to see big plays on offense, except for a defensive guy, right? They want to see a big-time offensive matchup, a shootout like the SMU game this past weekend where you see crazy catches, so on and so forth. Now, again, not speaking for everybody. I know both of you guys would rather see a defensive shootout flipped, right? But for the most part, big-time offensive explosive plays is what everybody wants to watch.
Coach?
Sells tickets, right? Like Trevor said, it sells tickets and it sells advertising. So, people really don't want to sit there. The average fan or whatever, like Trevor said, most fans don't want to be somewhere for 3 hours and 15 minutes and watch a 6-3 football game. Most fans don't. And, they want to see touchdowns. They want to see great catches, run backs, things of that nature. So, yeah, it's like anything else. There was a day where the same thing about basketball. The mid-range jump shot is an art, right? We want to see 3-pointers and dunks. That's what people are coming to see, right? Not a mid-range or a layup.
We want to see Steph Curry pull up from half court and jump it up and drain it.
It's exactly right. Same theory, right?
I'm from North Carolina. I went to UNC. Like, nobody wants to watch the four corners. They literally changed the game. They created the shot clock so that they couldn't just hold the ball for the entire time. So I get it. I understand completely. Because and then when you get to Roy Williams with the secondary break, that's a whole other thing to get into, because that's when we get into Ohio State or we get into TCU, which we're going to talk about all those teams. So let's start now. Coming out of the second week of the college football playoff rankings, Coach Sumlin, what stood out to you? Because they clustered up all the undefeated teams now, and now we've got some 2-loss teams, and we've got this and we got that, and what do we do? So what stood out to you?
Well, I think for the most part they got it right. because the way I see it, and everybody's going to get, I will probably get barbecued for this, but I think there's 3 tiers right now, right?
Sure.
I think they got it right. You can mix those teams up. Georgia, right? Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, undefeated football teams. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next 2, I still believe, and you've heard me from week 2 or 3, Tennessee and how Bo Nix are playing can beat one of those teams in a one-off game in a playoff situation. So I separate them in a second tier. Although they are talented enough, and I think they can win a game in the playoffs to get hot and win it all. And then the third tier, I don't see a separation. LSU won a big game, but we all seen LSU before 3 weeks ago. Are they better? Yes. USC, I still haven't seen them play defense all year, right?
Right.
Caleb's carrying them. They were talented. I haven't seen Alabama is not the Alabama of old. We've seen the chinks in that armor. Clemson, who they get beat by a average at best.
Yes.
Notre Dame team. So Ole Miss, UCLA, you throw them in that whole group. They play one time. Who knows? I just think last week some teams separated themselves, and there's 3 tiers, but the first 4, I get it. However you want to rank them, because in the next 3 weeks, that's going to play itself out. Next 4 weeks. But those other 2, Tennessee and Oregon, I think they're right in the mix, and all they got to do is keep playing, and Tennessee's got the hardest road out of all of them.
I've called it striking distance. They're in striking distance. Yep. And so Trevor, let's go to you. Let's get to what you think. Was there something that stood out to you from this? What's the team that you think that's the furthest out that still is in striking distance? Is it UCLA? Is it Ole Miss? Is it Clemson? Or is it that 2-loss Alabama or a 2-loss LSU?
I think there's a couple different teams, Felder, and I think that in a really weird far out chance, UNC's still in that conversation. Just depending. I mean, we've seen crazier things, but
I agree.
But right now, UCLA is that team that I think is playing really good football with one blemish, could potentially be 2. That they're the one that is the furthest down in the rankings that I believe could be mixed in with any of these teams that we see in the top. What is that, 7, right?
Yeah.
As it relates to the top group that we're discussing now, it's like the committee knew, hey, we're going to throw things out there week 1. We don't really care because it's all going to take care of itself. Clemson loses, they're out. Bama loses, they're out. You slide TCU up. It made it easy on them. 4 undefeated teams are the top 4 teams, and then mix and match the rest. I will say this. If it was today, right now, for the college football playoff, I think that number 5, Tennessee, number 6, Oregon, and number 7, LSU could all beat TCU at number 4 pretty easily. Ooh, and that's not giving TCU enough credit because they are undefeated. They've won big games, and they've proven people wrong all year long. I just see the way Tennessee has played, only blemished to Georgia. I've seen the way Oregon has played since the first loss of the season, and even the way LSU is playing right now with the big win over Bama. And I just think, man, when TCU goes up into the teeth of defenses like that and big-time programs like that, that they struggle. So that's my hot take of the day.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think you're looking at history and you understand the way that it's worked. So the big thing for me, and I want to hit these dark horse contenders. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, Trevor, give me 30. Coach, you give me 30. What was your takeaway from that Alabama and LSU game?
I'll go first here.
Yeah,
I think that it proved that Brian Kelly is the real deal.
Yeah.
We looked at Brian Kelly and we made fun of him for standing up on the spinning platform and dancing with the recruits and all this stuff. And then somewhat of a shaky start, the close loss there to Florida State. But since that point, him and that team have put their head down. Those players have clearly bought into his system and his style.
Yeah.
And they have some momentum behind them right now. I'm telling you, I didn't foresee
He's a
that.
good coach.
He's a really good coach.
He's always been a really good coach.
And I know it was nighttime at Death Valley, and Bama's not quite the Bama. Coach, you said it a second ago that they've been in the past, but it's still the former Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young, who played great for the most part. And it's still Nick Saban on the other side of the ball. And it's still Alabama coming to your house trying to knock you off. And I thought they just weathered the storm. They took it head on. They locked the gate behind them. And they played really good football. I think LSU is, like we mentioned a few minutes ago, one of those teams that could come out of the West and end up giving Georgia a run for their money in the title game.
I agree. I mean, I it said two things to me, and we've been talking about Alabama for the last 3 weeks. Are they getting better? It just didn't look like it. They got great quarterback play. They're not as explosive on the outside as they have been. They just aren't. And their defense has not been the defense that Alabama has been. That you got to give, everybody wants to talk about Alabama. You got to give LSU credit. I mean, they hung in there. They have gotten better. I mean, they have gotten better every week. They've weathered some storms, much like Oregon, right? We wrote both these teams off after week one, and even the Florida State game, everybody says Florida State isn't very good. We're looking at this. But these teams and these coaches and these players, and again, I'll go back to this. You go back to, you've got two transfer quarterbacks in this situation, right? Two guys, and I know this with Trevor personally, right? Early in the year, you got to get comfortable. And those guys are getting better, and their teammates are starting to feel them. The coaches are starting to feel them. And Jaden Daniels is a good player, and he's starting to assert himself just like Bo Nix, and that's a dangerous combination in the West for LSU.
Hot damn, that two good answers, two great answers. The biggest thing for me, and listen, I'll say this: Matt House was a GA at UNC when I was there, so he's a guy that just yelled at me every day, and watching him grow into his career has been amazing. From Pitt and working, like he's worked all over, and just watching him grow has been really cool to see him go from a guy that Rudy T yelled at for running a bingo to becoming, essentially one of the premier defensive coordinators in college football right now. And it's really cool to see somebody start from there, to see them start and then where they are. So I'm going to go with that. But I want to go, because I'm going to bring it back to North Carolina. I'm going to go dark horse contenders here. UNC, Ole Miss, UCLA, one-loss teams. Can you rank those teams for me in terms of, I'm going to start with you, Coach Sumlin. I'm going to start with you. 1, 2, 3. UCLA, Ole Miss, UCLA.
UNC, right?
UNC, Ole Miss, UCLA. Which one of these teams do you think has an opportunity to kind of be a party crasher?
Well, two of them, in my opinion, have trigger guys that can crash the party, right?
Yeah. DTR and Drake May.
And here, let me give you some numbers, right? He almost got my toast. Drake May, if I were to tell you he has thrown for 2,964 yards already and responsible for 35 touchdowns. Against three interceptions. Okay.
Yep.
You think I was talking about CJ Stroud, or you think I was talking about Hendon Hooker? No, that leads the country at his position. I mean, percentage wise, he's 71%. He's playing at a extremely high level. And because of that, they've got talent around him, but DTR has been a better player this year. Everybody's still kind of waiting for the DTR to come out that we've seen, but he's been consistent. Yep. I just don't see Ole Miss. I mean, I know they ran the ball like they've been able to run it on everybody, right?
Yes.
But when it comes it comes down to playing these top four teams, right? The one thing that these top 4 teams right now, this last week, have in common is they're going to score some points, right? You're going to have to find a way. You're not going to stop Ohio State from scoring. You're not going to stop Michigan. You're not going to stop TCU. If you may, but those other 2 teams, UCLA, the North Carolina, they can light it up, and that's going to give them a chance against anybody.
All right, Trevor. UNC, Ole Miss, UCLA. Put them in an order for me as a threat because they're in that quote unquote striking distance from the top 15 going up.
Yeah, I agree with Coach. I think the quarterback play plays a lot into it. Now, what's interesting about Ole Miss is you got to give a little credit to where credit is due at the quarterback position. Jackson Dart, kid that was at USC, coaching change, doesn't know Lincoln and the staff that's coming in. So he says, you know what, I'm going to go poke my nose around and see if I can find a home. Goes down to Ole Miss, dives straight in. And look, I know how difficult it is to go to a different school. I don't know how difficult it is to go to a different school as a young guy and become a leader.
Hang on. Can I ask you something? Can you give me just a quick 60 seconds on transferring? Because I think people think it's willy-nilly, no big deal, pick up and leave, do whatever. And they don't realize that you're leaving the stuff, everything that you've ever known, that you're leaving your friends, that you're leaving. It could be, you could be leaving your girlfriend. You could be moving away from your family. Like, can you just give me a quick 60 seconds on transferring?
Yeah, well, I'll relate it to the real world for most of us that are in, the workforce and things like that. If you're a doctor and you work at Methodist Hospital and then you transfer and you start doing surgeries at Texas Presbyterian Hospital or whatever it is, right? You're still doing the same thing, yes, but you've got new nurses, new processes, new systems, new procedures, so on and so forth. And you have to earn the respect of those new employees around you while also trying to, figure out all those systems, work on your craft and be the best that you can be. It's not like, I just pick up and you move over and it happens for you. It's the exact same thing with transferring. And I'll relate it to my specific experience. Went to Oklahoma. It took me 4 years to really earn the trust of all the guys in that locker room, all the coaching staff. They knew my work ethic. They knew what they were going to get from me day in and day out. When I transferred down to A&M, I had to prove to Coach Sumlin. I had to prove to my left tackle, Avery Genesee. I had to prove to our young starting running back in Travion Williams that I was going to be the hardest worker in the weight room. I was going to better myself in there. I was trying to learn a new offense that Coach Mazzoni brought in. I was trying to, be nice to all the support staff. There is so much that goes into having to develop yourself in such a short period of time that next thing you know, boom, whistle blows. It's the opener of your season. And you better have put all that time and energy in, because that's when the lights turn on and the fans see it and they think he was there last year. We hadn't had football, so we all went to sleep and hibernated for the offseason, and now he's just wearing a different jersey. No, it is hard. It is not easy, and it takes a lot for a guy to do that. So all these guys playing at a high level, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, all these transfer guys, mad respect to these guys because it's not an easy thing to do.
I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to get that part in, because I think folks think about transferring as like, I just pick up and move it over, like it's Legos, right? Where you just like, you move the yellow piece over to this piece and then you click it together and then it works. And it's not that easy. It's really, really hard. And it's hard from a coaching standpoint. It's hard from a player standpoint. And it's also hard from just these players are also people, like you're leaving the thing that you committed to and you really liked and you enjoyed it, or maybe you didn't like, and you had to find a new place to go. So I just wanted to put that in. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about these. What do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 undefeated teams. which of these 4 undefeated teams do you think goes undefeated? The good thing is we have 2 of them, Ohio State and Michigan. Let's start with them. They're going to play each other, so they both can't go undefeated. But we have Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. Can we rank which order we think that they like? What's the odds that each of one of these teams finishes undefeated, Coach?
Well, let's first of all say I think Vegas is telling you what you need to know this week against the Texans, right? They're the odds.
Yeah.
What's the odds now? Right? It's
let me hang on. I'm pulling it up right now. I'm going to I got to go to the daily lines.
Yeah.
We're going to the daily
7
lines.
points. Texas is 7. I have 7. Let's see, 7 or 8 points.
Yep. Does that make sense? So there you go. There.
Yeah, 7 points.
They're saying the same thing that you're saying, Trevor. Right? You said earlier you were talking about Tennessee and Oregon going straight up and beating TCU. Obviously, Vegas believes in you too. That's where they are. So you eliminate Michigan or Ohio State because they got to play each other.
Yep.
Process of elimination. Georgia's got the best chance right now.
Okay. I love the Dogs. I've gone from a Dogs doubter to a Dogs believer because they came out in that football game against Tennessee and they looked like a team that was like, you know what, we might have to put up 50 this game. Let's do it.
There's also enough. I'll say this too, and Trevor, you've been there. We've been there. Mm-hmm. There's even though those 7 or 8 NFL players off of defense left last year, there's enough guys in that locker room and that coaching staff that have been in that position. Tennessee has not, right?
No.
So to get to number 1, there's a lot of hoopla. Hype's doing a great job, right? Doing a great job, but you're managing something that nobody at Tennessee's seen since who knows when, right?
2007.
Yeah. So you're managing something that's different with a team that's never been there and guys that don't understand what that takes. And don't think that Kirby didn't take the opportunity to tell his team, hey, look, you know what? This is a slap in the face. We are the defending national champions. Screw these guys. And they played that way last Saturday.
I agree with you. I think they did play that way. I think that there was some merit to them not having been there, so they didn't feel the weight.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The problem was Georgia just decided, hey, we're about to come out and whoop that ass.
That's it. Exactly.
And I think but the part what for me was the aggression on offense. And Trevor, you hop in because the aggression that Georgia showed on offense, that's what did it for me. That's what made me. I'm fully converted. I'm in on Georgia. I'm all the way in. Like these guys, if they want to score 50 points, they'll score 50 points. And Darnell Washington is some sort of this psycho cheat code where it's essentially tackle over when he's in the game. But it's also, what if we put LeBron James out here and just had him run a streak, right?
Yeah, I think that Georgia showed us that they can flex their experience muscles.
Yes.
This past week. And Coach, you're absolutely right. The been there before factor does make a difference. We've all, even our listeners, if you've played even a high school level football, you know the first time you run in there on varsity or at the college level, the first time you run out there for your first snap, or at the pro level, same thing. From high school on, that first snap, that first game, that first season, you're shaking in your boots. You probably make the wrong read. My first play of my college career, we ran a little zone play. The DN crashed. I could have pulled it, pitched it to our off back that came around for the pitch, and he would have walked 75 yards to the end zone. I was so nervous. I didn't want to make a mistake. I just handed the ball off, and then you settle in. It's the same thing for a team like Tennessee or a team that has not been there before.
Right.
Georgia's sitting there going, man, we've seen this. We've run this a million times. We're fifth-year seniors. Let's run the zone play again. We're going to pull it. We're going to pitch it because we've just been there before. Tennessee is like I was. Hey, there's a lot of pressure. Let's go in there and we're going to play out, but we really just don't know what we don't know. And I think Georgia showed that this week. Now, granted, it was a home game, and they are super talented, but that been there before factor, I think, plays in very nicely this time of the year.
So here's what I'm going to say. The Kenny McIntosh play, first quarter, a minute and like 32 to go. I'm not expecting you guys to know that. I'm reading off these like weird notes that I have. But it's Georgia knowing what you're going to do, because everybody knows when you're playing cover 3 and then you have one guy to one side. What's that guy doing? He's playing man-to-man, essentially. And then you have trips to the other side, and you've got your money down, this down, and you know what you're doing. And Georgia's like, oh, if we keep the running back in the backfield and then push him to the wheel, those linebackers have to make a choice, or whoever's playing curl to flat has to make a choice. And they ran him as a wheel, and it looked like a flare. Mm-hmm. And then, so he's coming down hard, and then he, a little bit inside. Oh, guess what? Oh, you're wide open? You're completely wide open because the corner's gone. There's nobody over you. And it just was like, I was just looking at it like they're being aggressive. You know, you see what I'm saying? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like they're being aggressive, and they're making choices based on knowing the tendencies and understanding what's happening. And I do think Georgia is slowly living in the Alabama world of understanding tendency. And I think that's a huge step for them to take. Am I, like, you guys tell me if I'm crazy. Coach, what do you?
No, I think in that same realm, I think they're figuring out or starting to figure out who they really are, right?
Yeah.
And what they can do. What's Stetson Bennett? Because, let's be honest, early in the year, offensively, like, who are they? Right. You have arguably, and it's different.
Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey is who they were.
The two best tight ends in maybe in the NFC Central, right? Those guys, right? Seriously, right?
Yeah.
These guys are ridiculous, right? But who has guys like that on any football team that are tight ends of that caliber? You got to figure out how to use that, right? How to use both of them, because they're freaks. I mean, complete freaks in on a football field to either block, throw the ball, do whatever. And so that is just not a normal thing to have two guys running around like that are tight ends. You've got wideouts, you got running backs, but you got to get those guys the ball. And to figure that out is not easy. And so I think they have started to find out what those guys can do, either as players that are primary, or because they've established themselves as such great players and such great talents, what they can do to attract their own defense and create openings for everybody else. So that's not easy to do, and I think they figured that out right now.
Let me ask you something. You think Kirby is loosened up with Monken and letting Monken do a little bit more?
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, he's a great coach. I'm just saying, from a play calling standpoint, you got to figure out, what are you going to do with those guys, right?
Okay.
You got two great tight ends, but who else has that in the history of really football right now? I mean, two guys that may be the best at their position in the country. Okay, so we got to get them both on the field. But now, how do we use them? Do we flex them? Do we put them in here? We put them in the back. That takes time, right? And then based on the defense and what you said, now we're able to attack and use them in a lot of different ways, because, hey, if those two guys are on the field, because of our running game, because of the size, you're going to get a lot of, you got to go heavy package. Right? A lot of single high, and then now you create one-on-ones on the outside. It's but that takes time to figure that out, right? And you have to create respect for those players If you don't get him the ball, or do certain things for him, then guess what? You're going to get different defense. So I think, Todd he's a great coach. And I think it's just taking some time for them to figure out who they are offensively and with all the talent that they have.
Trevor, I want to, as a quarterback, I mean, let's just start with what Coach Sumlin just said. As a quarterback, if you're going to play 12 personnel and you have two of the best tight ends in the country, you know that they still, especially blocking tight ends, they got to go base people, right? Mm-hmm. What does that do to you mentally?
Well, just because they're in 12 doesn't mean it's always base looks on the other side, right? It may be base personnel, but it's always base looks because they're moving this guy all over the field. You're going to get all the looks that you would typically get. I will say this. In the college rankings, the college level, this is where coaching comes up to Coach Sumlin's point. It takes a coaching staff to go all in with their personnel to put those guys in the best position possible to succeed. You got two big-time tight ends. You got to figure out maybe not a whole new offense, but dang near a whole new offense. Maybe it's something that you've never called before because those are the best guys on the field. As a quarterback, as a tight end, as any player, outside of Case Keenum, who I know that Coach Sumlin gave the reins to call some of his own plays, because that was just a freak mentally at the college level. Most college players, even at quarterback, are taking the play in from the sidelines and they're executing based on the confidence that coach has in the aggression and in the play call. So they're just out there trying to execute, watching the film, repping it in practice, executing. It really is up to the coaching staff to develop that plan around the personnel that they have. And that's a lot of work to do. That's countless hours in the film room. That's countless hours yelling at each other across a board table saying, no, this will work or that'll work. And then being just being really a visionary of how are we going to attack different defenses? What look are we going to get to this? How can Brock get leverage there? How can we get another guy leverage off of Brock here? So on and so forth. Straight coaching.
Yep. But and to your point, listen, the reason Case was able to do that, he was also about 25 years old and in year 6.
That's right.
He'd been in Houston longer than I'd been there. So
I love it. All right, so we got two. Good grief! What a hard thing to say. We have two loss teams in the top 10. That's a lot of T's. Two lost teams in the top 10. LSU and Alabama. LSU obviously just beat Alabama. Tennessee has also beaten Alabama. Alabama's got Ole Miss, Austin Peay, and Auburn left. LSU's got Arkansas, UAB, and A&M left. I don't think A&M's probably going to be a problem for them. I guess Arkansas is the team that's going to maybe offer some resistance with respect to LSU. Ole Miss, I'm still interested in that game. But do you think that we have an opportunity to have a 2-loss team push to the playoff if they can beat Georgia?
I don't think so.
That's a no. I saw the head shake. No,
I don't.
I still see that scenario.
Why. Yeah. Here's the scenario that I've just played up in my head, and I know there's plenty of other scenarios and plenty of ball left. Georgia goes unscathed. And so they're a team that's in. They win the SEC title game. They're undefeated SEC champ. They're obviously in.
That's also going to make somebody a 3-loss team.
Exactly.
That is.
That's where I'm headed. Yeah, that's where he's headed. Good.
Yes.
Yep. Ohio State or Michigan. Let's say Ohio State comes out of that one. They win the Big Ten title. They're in.
Yep.
Let's give TCU the benefit of the doubt. They're in the Big 12, even though I think they may get beat by some of these other teams. TCU goes unscathed Big 12 champ. There's 3 in. So you got one more spot. To me, you have to give that to Michigan, who's a 1-loss team, and their only loss would be to Ohio State, or to Tennessee, who's a 1-loss team and their only loss is to Georgia. And so you're not even talking about a two-loss team at all. You're not even talking about a team that's playing for the title game in the SEC, which is not what we've seen in the history of the college football playoff, right? We've seen teams go into that game. Georgia last year, going to the game, they lose the game, they still go in the national title because of the two losses with Bama and two losses with LSU, and presumably the third loss with Georgia. It's got to be one of those two that I just talked about, because then you still got to talk about Clemson, that's a one loss. You got to talk about all the Pac-12 teams that might be a one loss. There's, in my opinion, there's no way that there's a two-loss team in the college football playoff.
Well, that's what we're getting at, though, is the idea that they stay as a two-loss team, which means that they do beat Georgia, Alabama, or LSU. One of them, whoever gets there, they beat Georgia. They win the SEC. They are the conference champ. And Coach Sumlin, you know this. They said that they put premium on being a conference champ.
Yep.
So if you're the conference champ, you come out of the West and you're the conference champ with two losses. Now, we have seen a two-loss LSU team win a national championship.
No doubt.
Because and their whole thing was what we were undefeated in regulation.
Right.
That was very funny. But the reality of it is if that happens, what do you do? Like, you got if you have a one-loss Georgia team, a one-loss Tennessee team, a two-loss LSU, or a two-loss a two-loss Alabama team. LSU and Alabama are the champions. Tennessee and Georgia are one-loss teams, but not the champions. How do we sort it out?
I can tell you this. It's kind of interesting you brought this up, because when I got to the SEC, you got to remember Nick won 2 national championships without winning the SEC, right?
Yeah.
People forget about this, right? So at that point, when he first got there, he said it was easier to get to the national championship than to win the SEC title, which he had done twice. So those scenarios they have happened and can happen. And I'll give you another. Another one.
Tennessee.
Wait.
Tennessee said it.
So if you got Oregon, UCLA, right?
Yeah.
There's no more divisions now, right?
Yep.
You got a one-loss team. Whoever wins that game is going to still have one loss if they continue down the road. They got to turn around and play each other again.
Yep.
Right? Is that right? So who's the Pac? If you got a one-loss Pac-12 champion who's beaten one of those teams twice, where do they go?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's rough. It's really hard. Like, it's literally like I think Tennessee is sitting in the catbird seat. Am I crazy for saying that?
Well, they still, I mean, you 3 weeks ago, because of who they've beaten, you said that was crazy. I've been saying that all along about Tennessee. But right now, because of the East, because of their loss, right? If they win, they're not going to get to the championship game. They get to sit around and watch. Okay. Yeah. And as I said, we've seen it before. We've seen national champions come out without going to the SEC championship game,
right, and
win a national championship and not an SEC title.
Yeah, I like Tennessee. For me, they feel like Trevor. What do you? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah,
I think Tennessee's. I think they're sitting in the catbird seat because they can win out one loss. Who knows what's going to happen between LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, and they're going to be like, "What about us?"
Yep. Because in that, it really is at this point, whichever lens you put on and how you want to go down the rabbit hole, because you're comparing one-loss conference champions to one-loss non-conference champions who may have lost in the conference championship, or in Tennessee's case, a one-loss non-conference champion didn't even go to the conference game, but their only loss is to a fantastic Georgia team. We could. Yeah, it's going to be tough on the committee. It's going to be very tough on the committee because you're going to have to choose whether the conference championship means something, or if it's truly the best 4 teams. Right? I mean, It goes back to what is the rubric? Is Tennessee better than the one-loss conference champion UNC if that happened, right? But because they're the conference champion, does that go further, right? I mean, I don't know. I know that Yogi will talk about how great of a process it is, but I wouldn't want to be sitting around that rich mahogany table to make these decisions.
All right, so let's talk some Big 12. I know you guys got some Big 12 experience, so let's get into let's start with Oklahoma. Where we are in, what is this, week 11? And OU they're on the verge of bowl eligibility. They're a completely different team with Dillon Gabriel in the game, right? Like that's to me, that feels like the difference in this football team.
They are. They absolutely are. Let's set that straight. If Dillon Gabriel's in the game, we have a chance to win the football game. If Dillon Gabriel is not in the game, Oklahoma does not have a chance to win the football game. And I mean that.
Yes.
Now, just because they've won a couple games, I mean, I know Kansas is playing good, and I know Matt Campbell does a great job at Iowa State. That being said, those are their most recent wins, dating back to Nebraska, dating back to the Nebraska game. Then they come out and they actually play relatively decent against a good Baylor team, but everybody takes their turn, right? And Dillon Gabriel turned the ball over. Now, they were not all his fault. Tip balls, it was very unfortunate. Yes. But you turn over the football and you end up losing the game to Baylor.
Can I call a timeout? There's two things. Can we talk about how we legislate tip ball interceptions? Because they seem to just go on to the quarterback immediately. And then to go carry that point further, can we talk about targeting really quickly? When a quarterback throws a ball that he should never throw, and the safety does his best to, hit the guy in the midsection, but the ball's low and the guy's down, like, we've got to take, there's quarterbacks shouldn't have responsibility for tip balls, but they also should have responsibility for those plays, right? Am I crazy for that?
So, Felder, what you're looking for is basically a baseball rule, like an error. Is that what you're looking for? Is it a hit? You're looking for an error. So the quarterback was 23 of 28.
Three errors,
one INT and 3 errors, or the
three errors. So it's not an earned run. It's not an earned
run, right? It's an average. Come on, man. That's not. I don't think that's gonna happen.
That's not going to happen. But I will defend a defender on this. Targeting is some of these targeting calls are just. It's impossible for a defender, and us watching on TV, we're all like, yeah, he hit him in the head and neck area. Yeah, it looked like he, he lunged, or yeah, it looked like he put his head down. But you guys know this. When you're out there on the field and that offensive guy braces so his head drops 6 more inches, or the ball is thrown low, that happens so fast that it is not fair to a defender, because they go and watch the replay, in the little booth, and it's like ultra slow motion. And it doesn't take into account the speed of the game. And I'm with you. I think they should be a little more lenient on that. But I get this player safety and everything else. Sure. So error on the referee.
I'm just saying. Maybe it doesn't have to be a yellow flag, Coach. Maybe it's a white flag. You throw a quarterback flag.
Completion percentage would go up. He'd have basically, like Trevor said, an ERA, right?
Yeah.
but it might go down.
Word on me, right?
It might go down if he's throwing hospital balls.
Exactly. It might.
That's all I'm saying. But no, I'm listen. When I'm looking at Oklahoma, and the big thing for me with Oklahoma I know they just lost to Baylor, but they won 2 in a row before that. And West Virginia's coming up, and I don't know what we're going to get out of West Virginia. Do you guys have any idea what we're going to get from West Virginia?
No.
But
to be honest with you, to Trevor's point, right? What are you going to get from Oklahoma? Are they going to play defense this week? Right? Because for 3 weeks, they didn't play at all. If the quarterback plays, they got a chance. But like you said, West Virginia, you look up, well, they're done. And you turn the TV on at the end, they're celebrating. They've scored 30, 40 points, right?
Yep.
2 weeks ago. So, you don't know who they are. And in a certain kind of crazy way, that's who the Big 12 is right now. Okay,
yes.
So you don't know who's going to show up. The K-State that beats Oklahoma State by 40-something, or the Oklahoma State that shows up and beats Texas, right? I mean, who you don't know where you're going to get every week. So to say, what's going to happen at West Virginia or Oklahoma, heck, who is Oklahoma State? Who are these guys? Because the 1 week they look great, the next week they can't get out of their way, and it's a crapshoot for the fans and for anybody every week.
It's wild. So Baylor 3-game win streak. This is a team that is, what do they have? 3 losses, and they were the pick to win the conference, and they played the Kansas State team that you just mentioned. K-State, they rolled what's your jig with a backup quarterback
without Martinez.
They rolled. And now what do we expect? What do we expect from Baylor?
I mean, you talk about consistency. How many weeks does it take to win football games or to play at a certain level to call it consistent, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this is necessarily consistent quite yet. They've had some really, really rough moments this year. They've played some really, really bad football, but conversely, they've played some really, really good football. So I'm not ready to walk in here and say Baylor's, coming out of this thing and they're the LSU of the Big 12 and they've gotten this confidence. I don't think they're there yet. That being said, I believe in Dave Aranda. I know that he's bringing his hard hat and his lunch pail every day, and he's getting after it on the practice field, and he's instilling every ounce of energy he has into these guys because that's the type of coach he is. So you can kind of hang your hat on that of, okay, we're going to get the best fight out of Baylor. We hope that they're prepared and they're not falling off. But then, going up against Kansas State, played pretty good. Kansas State's always been pretty good in these type of moments down the stretch. Who are we going to see? I'll tell you this. All of our listeners, you should go spend your piggy bank at Bet River Sportsbook on all these games. Try and get some money off you. I know for myself, I'm saving my piggy bank because I don't feel confident in any of these games.
No, I'm with you. It's easy to say TCU because they're undefeated, has been consistent, but every other team in the Big 12 has had a what the hell was that moment, right? Oh man, those guys are bad, right? Yeah. And then you look up, or 2 weeks before that, you're saying to yourself, man, Oklahoma State could be a top 8 football team 4 weeks ago, right? Or you say that about some other teams, but you got Kansas misses 3 or 4 field goals. Otherwise, Iowa State misses 3 or 4 field goals, and then in the next week, Kansas misses a couple. It's a matter of there has been no consistency in the league at all, except for TCU, and that I don't think that's going to change much as we go. That being said, like I said earlier, Vegas thinks differently this week for the touchdown. They're a touchdown dog. Which kind of surprises me.
I'll tell you this, as a player and coach, I'm sure as a coach, even as a fan, there is nothing that irks my spirit more and really, quite frankly, pissed me off more than when you go out and you have a great practice or a great game or you get off to a great start and you know that it's there. You know that you're capable, and the next week or the next play, you just don't get it done. And I feel like that's the story of the Big 12 this year. You've got a lot of teams that have the capability of playing at a high level, but the lack of consistency, to your point, Coach, has made them, it would make my head just spin and me just get aggravated because, hey, we know we can play up here. Why aren't we doing it every week? Why aren't we getting it done? And that's across the board in the Big 12. It's frustrating to watch.
I think I honestly, I think you put a pin in it perfectly. We could be this good, but sometimes we're only this good. And it's a problem. And that's what they have to figure out. And it's going to be interesting to see. That's Baylor. Iowa State. Iowa State's gone through it for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
Where they had, Iowa State was a top 10 team a year, a season ago.
You're being nice. You're being nice when you said sometimes we're only this good, because when I see sometimes we're really bad. Really bad. And that's a big drop. Only this good, you're being a really nice guy. Because some of those teams, you see them 2 weeks later, like, are those the same guys playing? Who's hurt, right? And nobody, the same guys are on the field, and it's got to be frustrating as hell to the coaches and the players.
Yeah, we all watched the game. Like, the number one game this is Oklahoma State against Kansas State. It's like, wait, what happened? Oh, you lost by almost 50 points? What?
Yep.
So I want to talk about being this good, but then playing here. And we got 3 minutes to go. And I just want to talk about Ohio State Northwestern. And we'll spin it forward because we have to talk. We're going to get ready for the Michigan game, and we have to, we've got to, when we get to Thanksgiving, we'll deal with that. But my takeaway from that game was I was impressed with CJ Stroud not taking a sack, him moving towards the line of scrimmage instead of running away. And I know Northwestern's not a formidable offensive opponent, but their defense did show up and didn't make that many mistakes. Can Ohio State not run the football?
I'll answer this first. It was disappointing to me the way that they played. We've harped on the fact that CJ Stroud and that entire offense, I think we've used it a couple times on this show, haven't got out of second gear. Right? They still have another gear to get into, and they're just kind of cruising through. They are extremely powerful, so on and so forth, all the adjectives.
Sure.
This week we saw them
stall out,
be able to do what they wanted to do. And every team has that for the most part, year in and year out. But we didn't expect that out of this offense. And I think not only the outcome of the game, but also the committee seeing that is the reason that they kept Ohio State put at 2 and had Georgia jump them. Now I get it. Sure. Georgia, big time game. Don't get me wrong. Much bigger game to win. But a week ago, they saw Ohio State as a better team than Georgia.
Right.
Because
this week, that changed.
To your point, because they played a game at halftime and they decided, hey, look, we're going to play the second half. Yeah. And they turned it on, scored what? Who knows how many points, right? In the second half, they ended up blowing a team out. I'll say this. I'm not making excuses, but if you watch the pregame and Urban Meyer talking to Day, say, hey, man, Day was like, hey, look, the wind's blowing, the grass is high, it's spitting a little bit here.
Yes.
Right? And Northwestern knew that. They committed everybody to the box. That wind was 25 miles an hour. There was some other stuff there, right? That took away things, but it's still no excuse. I'm just saying there were some other factors that were involved in them not being able to just dominate the line of scrimmage because of the amount of guys there, because there was not going to be a vertical threat in that game based on the weather.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, and I think that's going to be the big thing. Listen, Ohio State has got Indiana coming up, so we'll see how this takes shape. For Trevor Knight. For Kevin Sumlin, I'm Michael Felder. This is Field of 12. You can, if you want merch, fieldof68.shop. For everybody, Bet Rivers,